Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
Let's give a warm welcome to Rob Justus.
I feel like a little bit of an odd duck, a little different background, kind of why I do what I do. Home First Development started back when I was the executive director of Join, this nonprofit working with homeless folks. And Dave Carboneau was a board member. Dave has a finance background, but also was an executive at PGE. And we're experiencing a real difficulty in finding units for our clients. And over a few beers, Dave and I had a conversation about, there has to be a different way. And Dave kept, he's a numbers guy, kept thinking, affordable housing, this is a math question. If we could just kind of figure out the math. So, Dave and I decided to start a company that would build affordable housing affordably, looking at learning from a lot of the lessons learned from private developers, but with the idea and really starting with and looking at our pro forma with that lower rent. So what we did early on is we were looking at a $650 rent, and we worked backwards. And we backed into what does our land cost need to be? What does our development cost need to be? And we literally came and developed a formula. Well, timing was good and bad when we started. So we started Home First Development right at 2007, 2008. Not the best time to start a company. But to our advantage, guess what? Land costs were pretty cheap. And we had banks begging us to take property, and that's what we did. So we built our first project, finished it right at 2010, and and naively we thought, wow, this is great. Then we came in at right around $75,000 a door. And part of that with that formula was also based on kind of a real basic wood frame design, 2, 3, 4-story walk-up, pretty simple finishes. But really what was driving our pro forma was, those below market rents. One of the nice things that happened to us was the bank we were using at the time absolutely loved what we were doing and started introducing us to nonprofits and churches who he felt like who had land and had a self-interest in wanting to own housing, but were not traditional developers. So what's happened since that start is we've started working with nonprofits and churches and some mission-oriented investors to develop apartments. Traditionally, our projects do not have government subsidy in them, which the affordable housing folks, used to tell me, well, that's not possible. But our rents, at this, even today, range anywhere from our little one-bedroom mini at $400 a month, where a 3-bedroom unit will be just over $1,000. Part of that pro forma in the owners that we're building for, being nonprofits and churches, they're not looking at a developer fee. They're not trying to pull money out of the project. What they care about is that it cash flows, from day one. So what I'd like to talk about, more than Home First is kind of the affordable housing industry, the city and the county, and some ideas, the things I think that we could be doing a hell of a lot better job at. And that is creating affordable units. So remember, I come from a perspective, and I used to work with people who are homeless. When I was working with folks on the streets, when we would work with an individual, we looked at kind of a fundamental, what's driving, why is this person, low income? Why is this person on the streets? And we could, fairly easily, put people in 2 primary categories. People are in their situation because of economics. And that's the primary issue of what, they are employable. They don't have other larger issues, But the other very large issue was people were homeless because of health issues, mental health, addiction, people who has experienced drama because of domestic violence. But that health is really kind of driving. One of the conversations in the affordable housing world that you hear a lot about is, oh, we need to build housing for 0 to 30% of medium folks. And I get, okay, that kind of speaks to kind of a dollar amount, but what does that really mean? So, what you hear is, well, geez, people who are 0 to 30, they need lots of services. I think that's a little bit of a myth, and it's really the wrong focus and conversation we need to be having in this community. A lot of people who are 0 to 30 work. And actually, I think if you looked at demographics of people who are working minimum wage in restaurants, they all fall below that 30%. So kind of a conversation about, if you have somebody who is working at a really low wage, what does the housing for those individuals look like? But on the other side is, all right, let's look at our street population. Who's out there? And after doing this work for a very long time, what I see is a lot of mental illness, very serious addiction issues, people who are kind of DD dual diagnosed. I mean, they have multiple issues going on, people with disabilities, people who are not necessarily or maybe ever going to be able to hold down a job. What do we do with that population? From my perspective, when you look at public dollars and what the Housing Bureau and the city and the county are doing, we need to be focused, and they need to be focused on building facilities, housing towards that population. What if, and you hear 0 to 30, what if we had a conversation, we're going to try to house every mentally ill person in Portland? What does that look like? But that's the type of conversation we need. And public dollars, we have a housing bond, and when I look at what the Housing Bureau, their 71-page report of what they're going to do with that money, I think it will make little impact on what happens on Portland streets. On the other side, what do you do with the folks who have a low wage? I think the idea of some temporary assistance or folks who maybe want to rent a micro unit, which I'm sorry, but the city of Portland should be your best friend. And there's a lot of people out here who develop units that the city of Portland and county should be learning from what you're doing. Because in the end of the day, affordable housing is a math question. So looking at, those low-wage workers, and how do we, is there a flexible voucher program or something that helps people tap into the 30,000 units that are in the pipeline? And the other thing that I really feel like the city and the county should be doing is, and I feel this way, as a small little company, we're a for-profit, that the city and the county, I naively thought, hey, we're building 100% affordable units. That'd be a great thing. But, too often what I see is government sees private developers as more of the enemy. And there's a lot of distrust. And what I want to say to electeds is probably your best asset to really address this, affordable housing shortage is private developers, is entrepreneurs, is creative folks that are building micro units. You are an asset to the community, and what I see government not doing is really having honest conversations with you and start doing the math. What would it look like if we had an SDC waiver that was only a 10-year commitment, not a 60? Talk about tax abatements. Talk about turnkey opportunities, mass leasing. I mean, there are so many different opportunities that the city could be tapping into if they stop focusing on themselves and government and really were about, creating real solutions. This other issue that I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to bring it up just because it's a pet peeve of mine, and might have little to do with housing, but there is kind of indirectly. So when I was at Join and I ran a nonprofit, we had a group of outreach workers, and we spent our days on the streets. Our job was to engage low-income folks and transition those folks off the streets into permanent housing. One of the critical relationships we developed over the years, and I worked with 5 different police chiefs, was that relationship with the police bureau. And our outreach workers created, and had this relationship where there was this healthy tension. We worked with police chiefs to create protocol around homeless camps. We had a real clear criteria of where people could be sleeping and where people could not be sleeping. We would define that with kind of a low-profile area and a high-profile area. And again, creating that tension. Well, something happened when Mayor Charlie Hell, was in office. The advocates around the affordable housing bond convinced Charlie and his chief of staff to back off those camping enforcements, to step back away from that protocol that had been developed. And because of those advocates, and I heard this from Charlie and Josh Albert, myself, is we're going to stop enforcing a lot of the camping ordinance because we want homelessness to be in people's face, so they pass the affordable housing bond. Pisses me off. So one of the things that we need to do, and I do think Mayor Wheeler is trying to make an effort on this, is to really put some money back into the police, to really look at and try to scale back, what has happened with all the tents. But one of the bottom lines, and I'll just, the criteria for us, which was an absolute, was, people cannot pitch a tent in public right-of-way. Period. And our outreach workers would say to homeless folks, no, you can't put your tent on the sidewalk. You can't be in places where the general public need to walk and get by. So I am hoping and hopeful that, and it will take years of what has occurred, that Wheeler and the other city commissioners will fund the police and the outreach that exists to really try to pull back and make Portland more livable. Because in certain parts of town, as you know, it's a major issue. The other issue for me, and I think for me it's almost the elephant in the room, is the Portland Housing Bureau. And the Portland Housing Bureau has not been around for very long, maybe 10 years or so. But, I've watched the Housing Bureau become a funder, kind of a pass-through, to today, with this bond, they're going to be owner, designer, developer. Are they going to manage? Watch this process of how do you spend $250 million? I guarantee you that the people in the room, if you had access to 150 or 250 million, you could probably build more than 1,300 units. Kind of guarantee you on that one. Thus, that is why they need you, and they need to be, learning from what a lot of you have been doing for decades. And you're seeing it where they're already going back to the well and talking to TriMet about another 100 million. Before local government gets more access to capital or money, I really believe the Housing Bureau and how they approach housing development needs to completely be restructured. We'll see. The other thing that I want to talk to you about, and again, when I look at this issue, and I've been doing this work for 25 years, and I've watched, especially since the Housing Bureau, when you look at their annual budget, 70 to 100 million, but the lack of production, and from my perspective, the tax dollars wasted over the years, we should not be in the position that we are, but we are. So one of the other things that I feel like needs to change is leadership. Right now, with City Council, there's 2 positions that are open. Multnomah County has 2 positions. One is for county chair. I would love to see the business community, somebody get behind a candidate that is more fiscally conservative. Somebody who understands numbers. Somebody who is willing to kind of balance and ask the hard questions of government, the bureaus, about how we're spending our money. So, now's the time. If there's somebody in this room that ever thought about running for office and wants to bring a different perspective to the city of Portland, now's the time. So, and I can't, it's been a long time since I've seen, a candidate that's really been backed from a business perspective. And part of that, perspective, and for me, at the end of the day, and because of my own personal faith, I care about low-income people. That's why I do what I do. But I also see a system, specifically our local government, failing folks who find themselves outside, people who suffer from serious mental health issues. And I know that we can do more. So, Home First, small little company. We really enjoy working with the nonprofits and churches that we work with. We, at times, see ourselves as almost more advocate than developer. But, we believe that our small part, and for a lot of things that a lot of you are doing, hopefully we can turn the tide on homelessness and poverty in Portland. Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.